In this lesson, we'll get just a very brief overview of how we can start to work with operators inside of Softimage. So within Softimage, an operator is really just another word for a command or a tool that gets applied to our different pieces of geometry. So working with these different operators is going to be very, very, very important for any person who is getting into Softimage, and it's going to become a very, very critical part of any Softimage workflow. So just to give you an example of how these different operators can work, let's just take a very simple example. So let's go to Get Primitive, Polymesh, and we'll just drop in a simple polygon cube. Okay, we'll go ahead and set this to Shaded View, just to make this a little bit easier to see. Now, when it comes to working with operators, we really won't see these until we actually start to do something to modify this piece of geometry. So let's do maybe just a quick bevel, just to show how this works. So I'll press the E key on my keyboard with my edges selected. Let's go ahead and select those. And now let's go and apply just a quick bevel. So we can go to Modify, since we actually want to make a modification to this piece of geometry. We'll go to Modify, Polymesh, and let's go to Bevel Components. Okay, so in this property page that pops up, we can start to change things like the distance of our bevel. We can start to go over into this other tab and start to increase the number of subdivisions that this bevel contains. Okay, and we'll call that good, so we'll just close that out and then quickly tap our spacebar to return back to an object mode. Now, let's say at some point in time that we are working, and after we close this out, we think, well, maybe we actually want to come back and make some adjustments to that bevel. Let's say maybe we want to make that a little bit tighter or a little bit more spread out, whatever the case may be. Well, Softimage actually still remembers that this bevel was applied, and we can actually still go in and modify this bevel at any time. So if I select my piece of geometry that I want to come in and modify, we can access, if we go to something like our Selection Explorer, you can see here is our piece of geometry. All the operators are connected to it, and you can see specifically we're looking for this bevel op. So if I click on this, you can see here's our bevel where we can still come in and make really any changes that we want. So still having this ability to come in and work with our different operators after the fact is going to be very, very important. And this is not something that necessarily always applies strictly to modeling. There are several operators that you'll start to see for things like animation, rigging, and so on and so forth as we start to get a little bit further along with this training. Now, for most situations, this is a good thing, the fact that we can actually come in and at any point in time go back and adjust any of our operators. The problem, though, becomes that Softimage will remember every single thing that we do to this piece of geometry. So, for example, if I were to come in and start to move some of these points around, let's just do that by quickly pressing the T key on my keyboard. I'll come in and grab maybe a few of these points and pull these down. Now, if I tap my spacebar and go back to an object mode, now, with this object selected, if I go back to my Selection Explorer, you can see that Softimage remembers that we performed this movement of our components. And Softimage will remember essentially every movement for every component that we ever do. So if I come in and start to select, let's say, another set of these points, again, press the T key on my keyboard, select those, tap my spacebar when I'm done. Now if I go back to my Selection Explorer, you can see that Softimage has taken these movement of our components. Now it's actually started to group these together into a folder because it starts to realize that there are several of these operators happening here. So as you can really imagine, as we start to get into our modeling processes and doing lots and lots of modification to our geometry, these different operator stacks can start to fill up very, very quickly. And sometimes this can start to result in maybe in Softimage starting to slow down or having some performance issues as we start to have several pieces of geometry in our scenes, each with this very, very long list of operators that has been remembered since the moment that geometry was created. So if at any point in time, as long as this operator stack is in place, let's say maybe we wanted to not have this movement that we had just performed. We want to get these components back to where they were. Well, if we don't have enough undos to actually get back to that point, we could always just go back, select this piece of geometry. We can now go back to our components, and let's say we just take this move component, select that, and then just press delete on our keyboard. And now you can see that the movement that was previously stored has now been taken away. And same with this move component down here. If I were to select that and press delete, you can see that movement has now been taken away. Okay, so how could we actually work and keep things moving nice and efficiently? Well, within Softimage, we can really do two things. Now, the operator, the button that I'm looking for, is actually over here in this main command panel, and it actually is currently being cut off, so just to give myself a little bit more room, I'm just going to right-click on the select menu to collapse that. And what I'm looking for is all the way down at the bottom underneath this edit menu. Now, we have really two options. We have freeze and freeze modeling. Now, if I were to come in, and once again, maybe just move a few of these components around, go press and hold the T key again, make that adjustment. Let's actually come in. I want to be able to get back to my operator stack, so instead of collapsing that select menu, I'll actually just collapse the transform instead, so that way I can still get back to my selection explorer. So if I wanted to be able to come in and clear all of these different operators out, we can simply come in and choose freeze. And what that will basically do is tell Softimage to really just forget everything that has been done to it. You can see now my operators have been completely cleared out. Now that means that Softimage is no longer having to remember anything that has happened to this geometry, but it also means that now I've completely lost any ability to come back and make changes after the fact. So if you're going to be freezing your operator stack, make absolutely certain that you are completely finished working with your geometry, so that way you don't find yourself in a tricky situation where maybe you wish you could be able to come back here and make some of these changes now, which at this point we are no longer able to do. Now, within freezing, there are really two different types. We have freeze, which will freeze everything in the operator stack, anything modeling related, any animation related operators, rigging related operators, whatever the case may be, it's going to clear out everything. Now, this freeze M down below here, this is the freeze modeling. Now, this one's a little bit more selective, so that way we can still come in here and freeze any modeling related operators, but still leave intact any sort of rigging related operators, animation related operators, whatever the case may be. So it becomes a little bit easier way to work sometimes. Now, another option that we have here is what's called immediate mode. So if we are going to be making a lot of tweaks, a lot of pulling, pushing of our different components, maybe we don't necessarily want all of those to be remembered. So normally, again, if I were to select let's say some points, again, press the T key on my keyboard, move that around. Again, you can see that movement gets remembered. However, if I enable this immediate mode, and now come in, again, I'll tag another set of points, move those down, press and hold the T key again, make another selection, move those. You can see that as long as this immediate mode is turned on, that none of these different operators or these different procedures are being remembered. So this becomes, again, kind of a nice way of coming in here and making lots and lots of adjustments, tweaks, pushing, pulling of my geometry, and it can come in here and still keep my operator stack nice and clean. So again, as we start to get a little bit further along in our modeling and some of these other sections of our training, the ability to come in and work with your different operators and start to be able to come back and make adjustments, modifications to those is going to be really, really important, understanding just how to do that. Also, it's going to be important to really just keep in mind from a good habit point of view is the fact that as we start to work with our geometry, as we finish making a piece of geometry and we're finished working with it, it's going to be a good idea to come in and periodically just freeze all your different operator stacks on your pieces of geometry. Again, that'll keep your Softimage scenes moving nice and smoothly, and make sure that you don't wind up with a bunch of unnecessary overhead. So that's a look at how we can start to work with our operator stacks in Softimage.